Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the ceremony will begin. I'd like to welcome the mayor, the speaker, and our elected officials to please join me on the podium. Oh. Once again, we have an opportunity to adapt, improvise, and overcome. At this time, please stand for the presentation of the colors and the singing of the national anthem.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light, for so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Just want to thank the members of the NYC Joint Service Color Guard. I also want to thank Christina Burgos for an excellent rendition of the national anthem. Let's give them another round of applause. It is a real pleasure, and it's always an honor to be at the Intrepid. The Intrepid means a lot to all of us. It means a lot to all of us as New Yorkers. It means a lot to all of us as Americans. For me, it always serves to just directly connect me to what my parents did in World War II, and particularly to my father's service in the Pacific. When I'm on the Intrepid, I feel that deep connection to history and to all those who served on this extraordinary vessel and all they did. So it is exactly the right place to celebrate a major step forward for the veterans of New York City, those who served us and served us well, and who it is now our turn to serve and to support. This location is synonymous with bravery. The name Intrepid was well chosen for this ship, given all that it went through and all that it survived. Well, our veterans are intrepid as well. Our veterans fought for us and served through all the challenges, and so many continue to face challenges, and they should never have to face them alone. 225,000 plus veterans in this city, most of any city in America. And it's our honor to have them here and it's our honor to be there with them. They deserve our support. They deserve every effort to be fully reintegrated into our society, and that doesn't mean just the thanks and the praise, but the economic opportunities, the healthcare opportunities, everything that will make their lives and their families' lives whole. Today, we take an important step forward in that effort, and I'll be proud in just a few moments to sign legislation that creates the New York City Department of Veterans Services. I said this is always personal for me, and I know for so many people here today. So many of you here today served our nation, and we have to say thank you each and every chance we get. So many of you here today work on behalf of our veterans with all you have, and we say thank you for that extraordinary commitment. Everybody here today has been helped by the work of our veterans, protected by the work of our veterans. I think the vast, vast majority here probably know a veteran very well in their own family or count a veteran among their friends. So it's very personal for all of us. For my family, my father's wartime service in the Pacific was foundational to everything that came thereafter. I certainly learned from him the most powerful values in terms of courage and bravery and sacrifice and service, but also, as I've talked about before, he came back with the physical wounds and the mental health wounds of that war, and those continued on with our family for decades thereafter. And so many families can tell a similar story. It's not abstract. What happens in war does not end for anyone at the conclusion of that war. Unfortunately, it carries on. The difference is, back in my father's time, a lot of these challenges weren't identified, weren't talked about, weren't addressed. No one knows that better than former General, now Commissioner Lori Sutton, who worked so hard when she was in the Army on the mental health needs of our soldiers. Today, we understand better how to address both the physical and mental challenges. We also understand how long-lasting they are and how they affect the whole family. So it is quite fitting that we recognize in creating this department, we're serving not only the 225,000 veterans, we're serving many family members beyond, many of whom are facing challenges and have been for years and years. And it's time for us to step forward to do something fundamental to address those challenges. We started out in this administration believing that we could play a crucial role. We respect, of course, all that's done on the federal level, and that's the first effort on behalf of our veterans is made at the federal level. But we know we could help. We knew we could do a lot to help veterans connect with jobs, connect with healthcare services, and all the other things they needed, education, et cetera. We also recognize as we engaged that work just how much there was to be done and just how much we had to knit together to really reach people. And this new department will give us an ability to reach more people, to get them more help, to connect the dots as never before. A lot of people here today worked very hard for this day. And, you know, for all of us who are elected officials, we often have to humbly acknowledge that there were advocates and providers and so many others who had this idea years and years ago and worked for it and never stopped working for it. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge all of you who really get a lot of the praise today for this achievement. Let's give everyone a round of applause who fought for this. There are people here today who have felt these challenges directly and have taken their pain and their sacrifice and have tried to help their fellow family members who have tried to be there for veterans. I'm referring to the Gold Star and Blue Star families. Let's thank all of them for all they have done. There are folks who have made it their life's work and passion to support our veterans, and two of them are also so key to what's happened here at the Intrepid. They've been such staunch backers of making the Intrepid all it is today. And I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. They're good friends. They've done a lot for this city. Ken Fisher and Bruce Mosler, thank you for all you have done. And to prove that when it comes to helping veterans, it doesn't matter what borough you come from or what part of the country you come from, what party you're in, what your beliefs are, everyone shares this goal. I want to welcome the chair of the New York State Republican Party, Ed Cox, and thank you for joining us, Ed. So, we understood, as I said, there was a lot to do from the beginning. And even with the previous structure we had with the Mayor's Office for Veteran Affairs, with the help of the City Council and the strong support of the City Council, we quadrupled the funding and the staff for that office. And that gives us a strong foundation as we build toward the day when this department is instituted. We've been hard at work, as we've talked about, over the last 2 years on the issue of homeless veterans. The President of the United States made this a national priority. I commend President Obama for it. We are proud of the fact that over the last 2 years we have helped more than 1,800 previously homeless veterans find permanent homes. 1,800, and that's a real achievement for this city. We're proud of the fact that through our small business services departments, Workforce One centers, we've placed nearly 2,300 veterans and their spouses. And I always say, Lori's trained me well on this point. Placing a veteran's spouse is equally important because it's the same family that benefits. So 2,300 veterans and or their spouses have been placed, and we're very, very proud of that. But we know there's more to be done. You know, we're very proud. I mentioned the 1,800 veterans we've helped to permanent housing. I'm so proud of the fact that following the federal standard and the federal call to action, we've really drilled down on the chronically homeless, and this has been what President Obama particularly focused us all on, those who had been living on the streets, those who really couldn't break the cycle. And that effort has been very successful. We'll have more to say on that in the next few weeks. But we know that that is going to be an ongoing effort, because we aren't going to rest so long as any veterans become homeless. Anytime a veteran becomes homeless, it'll be our job to lift them up and find a solution. And we've put a lot of resources into it, and we'll keep updating you on it, but I keep saying one thing, and I'll say it again. Every New Yorker can help a veteran. Every New Yorker. If you have an apartment you want to rent to a veteran, we want to know about it. We want you to call 311. We want you to tell us about it. We have the resources. We need the apartments that we can get to those who have served us. If you have a job opening, let me do a quick advertisement on behalf of our veterans. If you want someone devoted, someone disciplined, someone skilled, someone who will be a leader in the workplace, hire a veteran. You can do that right now. So everyone can be a part in being there for those who served us. Now, before I introduce my colleagues, a couple of words in Spanish. Los hombres y mujeres que sacrifican. We're starting this over.
Sacrifican, sí.
Thank you. I've gotten my technical assistance. Los hombres y mujeres que sacrifican sus vidas para protegernos merecen tener acceso a todas las oportunidades que nuestra ciudad ofrece. Por eso, acabo de firmar la ley que crea el Departamento de Servicios para Veteranos de la Ciudad de Nueva York, el cual les da acceso a los recursos que necesitan para encontrar vivienda, empleo, ayuda de salud mental y otros servicios. With that, I first want to turn to our commissioner, and I said the other day, whatever Lori Sutton eats for breakfast, I want to eat that too, because her energy is absolutely extraordinary. In the time she's led this agency, she's already beloved by veterans all over this city. So I want you to know, General, you are on the right track, and we thank you. Let's welcome Commissioner Lori Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Speaker, Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Vallone. I look out at our audience today, I see service members in uniform, all services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, all components, active, Guard, reserves, veterans, families, fans, and friends of the New York City veterans community. Welcome. You know, in standing before you today, I am reminded that our veterans and their loved ones truly are our cities and our nation's leading natural renewable resources. We are truly blessed. Service, after all, is not just something we do, it's who we are. And reflecting on this historic ceremony today, who we are and what we bring to this moment, 3 words come to mind: grace, gratitude, and grit. Starting with grace, we must recognize that there is a spirit of grace and reverence even that hallows the decks of this ship. Recognizing and honoring the service and sacrifice of all of the Intrepid crew members and their families, and today's stewards, Ken Fisher, Bruce Mosler, President Susan Marinoff, thank you for all that you do to make the Intrepid stay alive, to honor, to educate, and yes, as I saw just a few minutes ago, those 2 little girls, one was 7, one was 9, in their astronaut uniforms to inspire service. This is where dreams are born and dreams of service are renewed. Thank you. Moving on to gratitude. Mr. Mayor, recognizing your bold and visionary leadership, joined in collaborative partnership, Madam Speaker, and yes, Chairman Ulrich. You know, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you remember this, but on the day that you appointed me, now going on 16 months ago or so, you said, Eric Ulrich, spend a lot of time with him. He's really smart and he really cares a lot about our veterans. Together we'll do great things. And along with Councilmember Vallone and the entire Committee on Veterans, indeed, we have and we are and we will continue on that journey. Working together, informed by the struggles and strengths of our veteran community, we are doing what no previous mayor, speaker, chairman, or commissioner or city has ever accomplished, and that's something to be very proud of. I must also take a moment to recognize the contributions of Team MOVA and all City Hall and City Council staff members. This includes you, Redmond Haskins, past and present, who have contributed to this moment. Thank you so much for your efforts. And finally, getting to grit. And I'm not talking about just any ordinary kind of grit. I'm talking about Gotham grit, the grit of our New York City veteran advocates. I have long said it, I'll continue saying it, we have the best veteran advocates in the world, and we are here today to recognize all that you, many of the leaders, the organizations here represented in this room, whose collective efforts spanning nearly 2 decades have led to this moment. I'm looking over here at old Father Time, Vince McGowan with the United War Veterans Council.
Ouch.
To the Veterans Advisory Board members, past and present, to IAVA and the New York City Veterans Alliance. We are all in this together. I gotta just share with you one poignant moment in this journey. a few weeks ago when I had the chance to call so many of our leaders and announce the great news. There was one leader, Joe Bello, who has worked with Metro Vets and on behalf of our veterans and families for so many years. I didn't know first what was going on until I realized Joe was so choked up at the news that he could not speak. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Joe Bello was speechless. Now that's a moment in history. Thank you, Joe, for your service. Now, we all know that as New Yorkers, we are not content to just merely read about history. We are determined to make it, to write it, to live it, and yes, to talk it. As President Reagan once put it, in a tribute to the legacy of President John F. Kennedy's service, he said, "History is not only about people, history is people. It's as heroic as young John Kennedy demonstrated on a Navy ship. It's as heroic as you want it to be. It's as heroic as you are." And so, looking back, we hail from a long line of heroes upon whose shoulders we stand. We must thank these heroes. Michael Handy, Pat Gualtieri come to mind, to name just two. We must thank them for their service and their sacrifice in contributing to what we are here to celebrate today, the authority to establish the New York City Department of Veteran Services. DVS has kind of a nice ring, doesn't it? And moving forward, let us never forget, our most important work lies ahead. We have much work to do, writing this next chapter of New York City history. This, after all, is sacred work. Over 225,000 veterans and their loved ones are counting on us, all of us, to continue this journey serving those who have served us. There is no greater privilege, and in closing, I would just say, let's rest up, take vitamins, and keep after it. God bless you all. Thank you.
I want to say for the record, I believe that Vince McGowan is a youthful, energetic, vibrant man. I was not going to let that stand, Vince. Okay. The City Council made such a priority of this, and you know, in the democratic process, that counts for a lot. The council really believed that there was something that we could achieve here together that would have a big and lasting impact. And Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito is always energetic in her agenda. It's an expansive agenda, and it's an agenda aimed at helping people at the grassroots. So today is a day that she can be very, very proud of. Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito.
Well, good afternoon to everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here in this impressive venue, a testament to that grit and that grace that the Commissioner talked about, a testament and a reminder of all those that are sacrificing themselves today, that have sacrificed themselves for our nation. And so it really is a proud moment to be able to be here, thanks to the leadership that is being expressed. A lot of this has come from the ground up through the advocates, and you always need a spokesperson and a true believer who moves these agendas forward. I really want to thank and commend my colleague, Councilmember Ulrich, for that advocacy that has led us to this moment. This citywide department is overdue, as you hear about the advocacy over 15 to 20 years that it's taken. This city, as has been said over and over, is home to 225,000 veterans who have bravely and selflessly served the United States, and it's a community that spans generations, from those who served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Gulf War, all the way up to the young men and women who helped rebuild our city after 9/11 or went to Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's important for us to remember that we still have young men and women in harm's way in both of those countries. Those wars are not over. When these young men and young women come home, they can sometimes face a difficult transition to civilian life. We've heard that in our hearings. We understand that reality. It is a shame, but it is very much a reality. Jobs, housing, and healthcare are often unnecessarily difficult to obtain, and the troublingly high suicide rate from our veteran community shows that government has not stepped up as it should. But with the creation of this department, we here in New York City are acknowledging that we need to do better and that we will do better by our veterans. We can't and won't allow ourselves to repeat the mistakes of the past or be complicit in the negligence that we may see at the federal level. We won't allow a generation of young men and women to slip through the cracks, and we won't become complacent to window dress problems when they are structural and deep-seated. And so it takes more than words, it takes action. And that is what we're doing today, taking action to all the veterans across this city. This department is for you, all of us who have veterans in our families. It's dedicated to all those that have served. For others, it's dedicated to their sisters, their mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, grandparents, or friends who answered the call. It's a reminder of our solemn commitment to our veterans and the promise that we must keep to them. And speaking of keeping our promise to veterans, many of the first responders to the 9/11 attacks were veterans as well. And that's why I'll take this opportunity to once again call on Congress to do the right thing for all of our first responders and renew the Zadroga Act immediately so that we can so that those heroes can continue to receive the health care they need. The police, firefighters, EMS workers, and other responders who bravely put their lives on the line in the moments, hours, and days after 9/11 deserve to have a government that has their back, not one that stands in the way of giving them the support that they need. And I'd like to thank all of my colleagues in the council for their support in creating this department, especially the chair of the Veterans Committee, as I mentioned, Eric Ulrich, for his leadership on this issue. It is a good day. Es un gran día aquí cuando estamos con el alcalde que va a firmar este proyecto de ley para crear este departamento que le va a dar servicio a todos los veteranos que viven aquí en esta ciudad. Es un momento para reconocer esos esfuerzos y ese sacrificio. Muchas gracias.
Well, Lori Sutton's right. When she came into office, I told her that she would find Eric Ulrich was a real ally and a passionate advocate. And I can tell you how many times he came up to me and said, we've got to find a way to get to this day. And I think his honest and passionate advocacy played a crucial role here. So you have a lot to be proud of today. Chairman Ulrich, come forward.
Thank you. This is a very surreal moment for me. I was standing up here with my good friends and colleagues, and I honestly felt like I was dreaming or that I was having a dream. The mayor was acknowledging the head of the Republican Party. Lori Sutton was quoting Ronald Reagan. And one of the 3 Republicans in the council is having his bill signed into law. So it's the Lord works in mysterious ways. Amen. Amen. But thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor de Blasio, Commissioner Sutton, Madam Speaker, my good friend and colleague, Councilmember Vallone, also from Queens. Today we are making history. With the stroke of his pen, the mayor will usher in a new era for our veterans, and the city of New York will once again lead the nation in honoring the military service and selfless sacrifice of our large and diverse veterans community. The newly created Department of Veterans Services will improve our ability to help and empower veterans throughout the 5 boroughs. It will strengthen the relationship between veterans and the elected officials who serve veterans. It will put into proper place the checks and balances to make us all just a little bit more accountable. Most importantly, it is the right thing to do. Veterans are such an important part of the fabric of our city. By elevating the Mayor's Office of Veterans Affairs to the department level, we are one step closer to making New York one of the most veteran-friendly cities in America. I want to thank Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito, Councilmember Paul Vallone, Public Advocate Tish James, and all of my colleagues, 45 of whom co-sponsored this bill and championed its passage. This truly is the most meaningful piece of veterans-related legislation that the city has ever passed. I want to thank Mayor de Blasio and Commissioner Sutton once again for their support and for their friendship. The mayor indicated before in his remarks how personal this issue is to him, and I don't doubt for any second his sincerity or his commitment to serving veterans in the city. This is a bipartisan issue. That is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's an issue that we all care about as New Yorkers and as Americans, and I was very proud to work closely with him and his administration and the folks from the legislative division to get to this day. But this historic day would not be possible without the help and guidance of our very vocal and active, as Commissioner Sutton mentioned, advocates in the community, our veterans advocates, all of whom work tirelessly on behalf of this cause. I want to recognize just a few of them who are here that played a critical role. First and foremost, Mr. Paul Rykoff from Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Thank you, Paul. Jason Hansman, who now works for the administration but used to work for, Paul was very active and helpful, especially at the committee hearings. Joe Bello, I know Lori told a story about him crying on the phone. I could tell you stories where he was cursing on the phone, but that's not for public consumption. But thank you, Joe, for your friendship. Kristen Rouse, I don't know where she is. I hope she's here. Thank you, Kristen. I know she's here. John Rowan, Vietnam Veterans of America. Thank you, John. Thank you. Vince McGowan, Fang Wang, the American Legion, all of our friends from the American Legion. Thank you very much. Who else are we not forgetting here? I'm going to get in trouble later. I beg your pardon. Gold Star Mother. Yes, Gold Star. Please stand up, ma'am. The Gold Star Mother. Please take a bow. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. I also know that the head of the Veterans Advisory Board, Todd Haskins, is here. Thank you, Todd, for being here with us and for your help. And I know that Lori mentioned Redmond Haskins, who no longer works for me. He's a registered lobbyist, so I can't buy him lunch and he can't buy me anything. But this really was a baby of his. He started out with IVA and with Eric Bernstein and Kevin Ryan and folks who used to work for the council, and some of them still do, to try to draft this and move the ball forward and get some more co-sponsors. So I want Redmond to take a bow. He did a great job. And also Laura Popa and Ramon Martinez, who I drove absolutely insane over the past 6 months. And the speaker just gave an aha. So, yes, I did. But when you're fighting for what you think is right, it doesn't matter how crazy you drive people. I know that in my heart this was the right thing to do. And many years from now, there are going to be lots of people that look back and say what a great thing it was that they established the Department of Veterans Services. Many years down the road, they'll be funding things and building things and doing wonderful, terrific work, and it will be because of the fact that all of us here work together with all of the veterans community. And it wasn't my bill, it was our bill. We did it together. When, you know, and there's an adage in politics that says success has many fathers and defeat is a bastard child, right? If this thing didn't pass and didn't go anywhere, it would have been all my fault. When we passed it, everybody was taking credit but me. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And I want to let you know this is our victory. This is our moment, and it belongs to all of you and all the veterans. So God bless you all, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, again. Thank you.
The phrase is success has many mothers and fathers. Let's get that up to date. Lori, can I get an amen? Okay. That's right. Paul Vallone, dear friend for many, many years, and the Vallone family has done so much for this city. And Paul was way ahead of the curve on this one of the earliest voices in favor of the idea of creating this department and long-standing advocate for it. So it's my honor to welcome Councilmember Paul Vallone.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Boss, we did good today. We certainly did. And Chair Eric, your friendship, our fatherhood stories, your compassion for this, and everyone's passion in this room, all those hearings, all the testimony, the passion that we talked about today, you know, you can't hide that. Joe and I had a conversation earlier saying everyone in this room knows what everyone in this room did, or everyone on the ship did, to get to this day. And that's the true testament to being a veteran and guiding us. And so we're here to say thank you to giving us that stewardship, the leadership, the energy to keep that fight going, to get to today, and know that there isn't really an obstacle that we couldn't do when we stood together. And that's what the Speaker's legacy is going to be, that she's united this council in a way that when we're passionate about something, it'll get done. And I want to say thank you for that. And this is one of those days. And the mayor to champion, and I say we have some work to do. I just wanted to close quickly by saying, it was right after Veterans Day, which is every day, but on our Veterans Day, that's right, it's every day. Veterans Day is every day. We were with some students, as we always are, going into the schools, and we were so excited about this, and the students wanted to get excited about it, and I said, we just created the New York City Department for Veterans, and they looked at us, well, what does that mean? That's what we have to establish, and that's what we have to explain, what that's going to mean. Because if it's not for our children, then it's for nothing. So that's why we nod our heads. That's our next step, to show the children what this department's going to do because of what our veterans have done, what our veterans are doing, and what our veterans will do. So God bless. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Thank you.
Two last things to do. One is to say to everyone who was a part of this, thank you, and God bless you for what you have done. And the second is to do a brief exercise in democracy. Everyone who believes I should go to that desk and sign the bill, now say aye. Aye. I think the majority has it. The ayes have it. We'll sign the bill, and then we'll come back for questions on this topic and then off topic after. are going to be speaking to the media now. Sorry. Okay, we need to get everyone back to your positions. Okay, we're going to first do questions from the media on this topic. I then have another update I want to give. We'll do questions on that, and then we'll do some general off-topic for a few minutes. So, questions on today's bill signing. Any questions on this? Anna. That obviously in the budget process coming up in January, and I think Paul Vallone asked the right question. This is a new concept, and we want to decide over the what we think the shape of it could be. What we know is we are going to continue to deepen the work on ending veteran homelessness. We're going to continue to deepen the work on connecting veterans and their families to jobs. But we have to figure out the shape of that and what it's going to take. So that will come out in the budget process. Yes?
You had initially opposed the bill. Can you just explain a little bit of what your concerns were and what changed?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure if we were elevating something to the level of department that we had a serious outline of where we wanted to go with it and the impact it would have. And as we went along, first of all, I give the council a lot of credit. This is a democratic process, always, between the council and the mayor. And I listened very intently to the council's priority. And this became a very important priority of the council. And that matters in and of itself, and it should in a democracy. But also, we deepened the work. Obviously, in particular, the work we've done this year on veterans' homelessness deepened. And as I experienced it more and more, I saw what the advantages would be of having a department. I wanted to make sure we had enough time to organize it properly, and that was something we negotiated through and we got to a good agreement on. So I think it was an organic process. In the end, I believe this will be very good for the city, and it will allow us to further focus on the needs of veterans. I would dare say the federal government has to do more too. Again, that is the first line of support for our veterans. And this last year or two have been pretty challenging years on the federal level. I think it's been very eye-opening in terms of what has still not been done on the federal level for veterans. So I don't want for a moment us to mistake the fact that the city's stepping up as any kind of free pass to the federal government when it comes to fulfilling its obligations. But it became clear the city could do more, and it was right to do more. Yes?
It's starting to fade with that question. Why a separate department? What does that bring to the services for veterans that General Sutton isn't already bringing to veterans?
Well, this is an area where I was quite clear. I think General Sutton's been doing a great job, and I think the office has been doing a great job. So I always lovingly challenged my colleagues on the council with that point, that I believed the existing apparatus was working well. But it is obvious that elevating the status has meaning unto itself in terms of showing our focus, and it does cause, I think, resources to move effectively. And it also, to Paul Vallone's point, is going to cause us to think, I think, a little more strategically about the ways we can help veterans over the long term and the kind of strategy we need. I think it elevates the whole concept of what we can do further that would be effective. But again, never suggesting that the federal government doesn't need to do better at its part of the equation. Please.
Thank you very much. This is a question that came up at the pre-stated council press conference as well. Part of the problem, this systemic problem, structural problem, if you will, that has plagued MOVA over the past 4 administrations, quite frankly, both Democrats and Republicans, is that the funding mechanism was always at the mercy of the mayor. MOVA's funding was whatever the mayor wanted it to be in that particular year, and the council had no ability, oversight, or formally in the budget process to do anything about that. Now, Mayor de Blasio, to his credit, and he deserves a lot of credit, tripled MOVA's budget the first year. Quadrupled, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. Quadrupled the funding for MOVA. But the problem, of course, becomes what happens 8 years from now when none of us are in public office anymore, or in the mayor's office, council, and the next mayor says, you know what, I don't think veterans are a priority. I don't think they need $1 million or $5 million or $10 million, whatever the budget happens to be. the budget will always be at the mercy of the mayor. Now having a city department, an agency, it's going to be accountable just like every other city agency. The Parks Department comes before the Council Finance hearings, the Department of Transportation, every single city agency, as part of the natural checks and balances that exist in the charter, will now be, and contracting as well, will be, part of the council's oversight role. So I think that's an important part. The council is now on the hook. You can't blame the mayor when you're not happy with veteran services in New York City, because we now have a responsibility as well to make sure that things are being done efficiently and that they are funded properly as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Can you just give us an example of like how this will be different, or how veterans in New York City will notice the difference, moving to an actual city department rather than the MOBA that we knew before?
Every question is fair and logical, but I have to answer back with the facts. Again, I think MOVA has been doing a fantastic job. Now, Eric makes an important point. MOVA is doing a good job because we put more resources in. Having a department will also continue to encourage a steady flow of resources. That is a fair point. And I sometimes struggle in these questions between the executive and legislative branch because I served in both. So it's impossible not to acknowledge the truth that in a checks and balances system there are advantages to making sure both sides are pushing for what they think is right, and often yields a better product. I will always defend the executive branch's prerogatives, but I think there's a democratic, small d democratic point there. On this one, following Eric's point, we've made a resource commitment that's very serious. We're going to continue to. I think the name alone helps send a message of our level of commitment. I think we have started to, over the last couple of years, do things previous administrations didn't do. And by the way, this is a problem all around the country. The veterans' homelessness dynamic was tolerated by administrations in cities all over the country, Democrat and Republican alike, for a long time. Under this president, to his credit, he said this is no longer tolerable. We've tried to follow suit with the way we've funded and the way we've acted. But it is, I think, part of a larger recognition that as a nation we have not gone far enough in terms of helping our veterans. This is something we can contribute. But it is not going to be night and day, because what we were doing already was, I think, quite strong. Any other questions on this topic? Yes, please.
On that point, do you think that there are other offices where there should be transition to an agency, like the mayor's office, that domestic violence, like do domestic violence victims, like essentially need an agency as well?
Everyone deserves help and support. I don't think a mayor's office is a minor matter. I think it's a very important reality to have a mayor's office focused on a particular issue or on a particular set of needs. And generally speaking, when we have that model, we believe that's the effective model, and it should stay that way. So I think our veterans obviously have played a particular role in our society. And again, I think there's been a recognition in the last few years of what wasn't done for our veterans that obviously should have been, and that includes nationally. So I think this one has some very particular characteristics. But I think the broad answer is, if something is a mayor's office, that comes with a lot of weight, a lot of impact, and we believe that's the right way to do things. Last call on this topic. Let me now give you just an update on, I think, an issue that for many, many New Yorkers, in fact, I'd say most New Yorkers, is probably their number one issue of concern. 2 years into the administration, I can tell you that what I used to say on the campaign trail remains true. The number one topic raised to me by New Yorkers, wherever I go in this city, is affordable housing. And it's usually said to me this way: I'm worried I won't be able to live in my neighborhood anymore. I'm worried I may be priced out. I'm worried I may be pushed out. I need affordable housing. Where can I find affordable housing? Will it actually be affordable to me and my family? That is what I hear the most from my fellow New Yorkers. And that is why we said from day one we were going to do something that has never been done before in this city. We were going to create more affordable housing than any of my predecessors. Now, my predecessors, especially Mayor Koch, who did something truly foundational for the city with his affordable housing plan. Mayor Bloomberg had a very large affordable housing plan. But our plan for 200,000 apartments, enough for 500,000 people, is the largest affordable housing plan in the history of this city or any other city. And we have been working on a number of pieces that are necessary to achieve it, including mandatory inclusionary zoning. That will change the rules of engagement on development in this city once and for all, and require developers, when we do these major land use actions, will require the creation of affordable housing. It is the only way we're going to preserve an economically diverse city and a city for everyone in the future. We've been working with the City Council for 2 years straight and hearing from them constantly about how concerned their constituents are on this issue. We've been working with community organizations, advocates, community boards, you name it, to figure out the best way forward. My job is to put what I regard as bold and forceful proposals on the table, and then, of course, we listen to and work with all stakeholders, and when we think there's an important adjustment to make, we make it. But the bottom line is we're not going to get anywhere if we don't have a clear, strong plan that changes the rules of the game. We simply can't serve the people of the city if we keep doing things the way they were done before. So our plan is moving forward. It's moving forward aggressively. Two of the biggest constituencies in need here are working families, people who work hard all day, sometimes 2 jobs or even 3 jobs, and still can't make ends meet and still can't find housing they can afford. That is a big swath of this city. And our largest growing demographic group are seniors, who in so many cases are struggling. So many of them on fixed incomes are struggling to find affordable housing or hold on to the affordable housing they have. Those 2 constituencies, working families and seniors, 2 of the backbones of this city. Well, crucial organizations representing those 2 constituencies have this week come out strongly in favor of our mandatory inclusionary zoning plan and our larger vision for affordable housing. On the side of working families, the Hotel Trades Council and 32BJ SEIU, and the leading organization in this country representing our senior citizens, AARP, which has an extraordinary constituency and has been such a powerful voice for seniors. Collectively, these 3 organizations that endorsed our plan this week have a membership in this city of over 850,000 people, more than 1/10 the population of New York City represented by these 3 organizations alone. We will be working with them, and I want to say AARP in particular has engaged us on a number of things we can do to help seniors get affordable housing and other ways that we can help seniors, and we're going to be working with them as a crucial ally going forward on a host of needs of seniors. And, of course, we're listening to all of the dialogue happening at the neighborhood level. It's a good and healthy dialogue because it is about the thing that to many people is the most essential issue, and that democratic process will help us as we perfect this legislation going forward. So we're just clear. We're not going to allow the status quo to hold. We're not going to use the policies of the past that just weren't sufficient. We need a new approach. We are going to act. We're not going to stand by and watch idly. We're not going to allow, with all due respect to my friends in the private sector, the market alone is not going to determine the outcome here. The people's voice through the government must be decisive in addressing the changes in the city, in addressing gentrification, which has very good and very challenging dynamics to it, but we need a strong policy, and the support from these 3 organizations makes clear how many people in this city recognize that we need real change if we're going to keep this a city for everyone, for every kind of New Yorker. With that, I want to see if there's any questions on that topic, and then we'll take a few general Q&A questions. Any questions on that topic? I'm sorry? Grace, you're getting an assist from Eric Ulrich because I couldn't see you. Go ahead.
I guess a 2-part question. One is do you wish that you had those groups on board with your plan before it started getting voted down by the borough boards, and that you had maybe organized that support or were able to announce that earlier in the process? And 2, you made the point at the end that the people's voice through government must be decisive in here, but isn't the votes that have been taking place around the city, aren't those, the people's voice sort of in their true...
Fair question. Let me address the second one first. I was saying there, I want to make sure I'm speaking clearly, again, with absolute respect for the private sector has its job to do and its imperatives. When I say the people's voice, I mean through their elected representatives. The final word in this process is first the City Planning Commission, which is appointed obviously by elected officials, and then the City Council and the mayoralty. So as much as I absolutely value the input of community boards, and I've worked with community boards for many, many years, the final word on land use is those who are elected to make decisions on behalf of the people. That's what I mean to say, that we are going to balance the market dynamics. Because when the market dynamics, in my opinion, had too much sway in the process, we ended up with a pattern of gentrification and other changes that led to too many people being priced out. And there was no counterbalance. There was no program to preserve enough affordable housing, to build enough new affordable housing, to protect tenants in place in the housing they were in, to make sure that tenants were not illegally displaced or evicted. So that's the schema when I talk about the people's voice as expressed by our city government. On the first point, a lot of questions I hear from the media are about, do I wish I had done something one way or another? In this job, you don't have a lot of time for regret. There's something that we have to do in the mayoralty literally every minute of every day. We try and do everything as quickly as we can. I'm very gratified these organizations have come on board, and I think their support will be decisive. It is never a surprise. I think my colleagues, they may nod or they may just nod to themselves internally. It is never a surprise when the community board opposes what it sees as development. That is not a news flash in New York City. But community boards have a very important voice, and they often offer ideas and suggestions that help us make something better. But in the end, again, the decision makers are the people right up here. Anything else on this topic? Yes.
How do you address this concern of people, which is that when these nice new buildings go up, even if they get 50%, 60% affordable units, the very fact that they are improving that neighborhood, bringing more people to the neighborhood, and more amenities to the neighborhood, that is going to bring an inexorable market change to that neighborhood. It's going to make the neighborhood today more attractive and more expensive. And the people who live there now, in these neighborhoods that may not be as nice as they will be.
Boy, this is, I'll try and keep it brief, but you've hit the heart of the matter, which I thank you for. Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito just said it's going to happen anyway. She took my line, and I thank her. That's the first thing to know about this discussion. If you don't believe that, come with me to Bushwick, come with me to Bed-Stuy, come with me to the areas of Park Slope that were long past changed before there ever was a rezoning. The market dynamics are having a huge impact. They have for a couple of decades now because the world turned. It's a globalized world. New York City solved its fundamental challenges around crime and some of the other things that were holding us back. We became an ever more attractive and strong place in a globalized economy. The market has been moving for most of 2 decades. So it's happening. The question is government in this game or not, trying to represent the people's interests and create some balance on behalf of the people? And the second thing that I find problematic in the discussion, again, I'm very glad you raised it, because I think this is what we should all be talking about. I think this is a big conversation we need to have in this city. You said people are concerned because there will be improvements to the neighborhood. The neighborhood become more attractive. I don't know anyone who doesn't want their neighborhood to be improved, safer, to have the parks, to have the schools, to have all the things that they want for their community. But some people in this discussion actually seem to imply, why don't we leave, let's say a neighborhood doesn't have all that it should have. Why don't we just leave it that way? And somehow the housing will be somewhat, still affordable, but we'll accept the fact that some people get to have great services and great amenities and a higher standard of living, better quality of life, and other people don't. That goes against everything we believe in. We're supposed to help every neighborhood become stronger. And in the development process, there are great opportunities to improve neighborhoods. And the council members will tell you, whenever we talk about an opportunity to rezone, They are the first to say, here are historic needs of the community that have not yet been met that we must meet through this process. So they see it as that special opening to get things done that hasn't been there before. So no, I don't accept the notion of a neighborhood that is struggling or suffering, just let's leave it that way. That's wrong. And I certainly don't accept the notion if we do nothing, everyone's affordable housing will just stay the way it is. That defies everything we understand about market dynamics. The government must act if we're going to create balance in this equation.
I guess what they would say is regulate my apartment so that when the market never goes up, my rent will be controlled and suppressed, and they don't feel the protection because there's the expansion of rent control.
Well, please, let me give, thank you. I have plenty to say, but let me give the speaker a chance here.
I want to just echo in terms of understanding the process that we're in right now, because this is definitely a very controversial issue and it's getting a lot of attention. The process ends at the City Council in terms of this issue, and the weighing in that the community boards have had at this point in the borough boards is just the beginning of the process. And as we negotiate with the administration, a lot of the concerns that are being raised are going to be part of our negotiations, and we're going to expect, and you can clearly understand that the changes that the inclusionary zone application that has been presented initially is not going to be what we end up voting on at the City Council, because there's a lot of work yet to do. Understanding the concern you raise, because I know we get that all the time as council members, one of the things that this council has done, and also this administration, is putting in millions of dollars more towards legal representation to allow tenants to avail themselves to legal services as a way of protecting themselves and being able to stay in their affordable apartments. And the most vulnerable are seniors. That's the number one concern I get in my district office. But the other issue is that as we build and as we invest city resources in building affordability, the affordable units are put into rent regulation. So that's another way of what we're talking about, leveraging the power of the city to try to stem or try to create opportunities for members of our communities to stay in their communities. One is to protect them where they're at, but is also putting more units in, because we are losing a lot of units, that's without a doubt. But until we get the rent laws changed at the state level, unfortunately the Republicans are holding that up, sorry Eric, we have to work with what we've got and the reality that is before us. And these are the challenges. The rent regulation units, we're losing a lot of them, a lot of times because landlords are being unscrupulous, and that's where the resources for legal services is critical. And then also creating more opportunities by building these affordable units, which will go into rent regulation.
One more follow-on on that. I think it's well known that the speaker and I both think that Albany should have gone a lot farther on rent regulation, and we'll keep fighting for that. And I will constantly believe that there is opportunity to go farther, because I think the people of the city are demanding it. The fact is that we also, on top of, as the speaker noted, the resources we put in, the $36 million for legal services to support tenants, we also put in a billion plus into an infrastructure fund, which is in our capital budget, to address the infrastructure needs of communities at the time of rezoning. And one of the big controversies in the past that I think breeded a lot of cynicism was promises were made about affordable housing that didn't come to pass, or promises were made about infrastructure being there to match new development, and then the money was never there. One of the things the council felt very strongly about, and it's reflected in our budget, is that they needed to know that that pool of resources for all the infrastructure that goes with a rezoning, for example, would be available, so that when it came time to work out the specific plan, we knew that money was available and could be locked in. So it's a very different reality, and I think communities are going to look at that and see an opportunity to make real progress through this process and see the money actually visibly there, and that's going to be important. But if you were to say, couldn't we just get Albany to do a whole different version of rent regulation, I would say we'll work to improve it, but we know that's not happening overnight, and we know it's not happening on the level that New Yorkers would want. What we have is these tools. We have doubled capital spending on affordable housing, even compared to the Bloomberg administration that put a lot in. And we are working with the real estate community to maximize the amount of new affordable housing. If we didn't do it, that affordable housing wouldn't be built. If we didn't have mandatory inclusionary, a lot of affordable housing wouldn't be built. If we didn't have 120,000 units that were going to be preserved under our plan in place, and for the long term, those units in many cases would go to market and no longer be affordable. So this is, to me, this is how we make sense of a very challenging situation. Any other questions on this topic? Michael?
Mr. Mayor, has the effort to achieve affordable housing been more complicated than you expected when you first took office?
Not at all. I've been to this rodeo, Michael. You know, if I was a council member for 8 years in one of the areas that was developing most intensely in the city, I had many a long night at a community board or a town hall meeting or any number of discussions where I often was the one fighting for more affordable housing. And it should never surprise you, some people are dubious about affordable housing because they don't believe it'll happen, others for other reasons. Some are not the best reasons. I supported, it's well known, I supported the Atlantic Yards project because I thought it would bring an unprecedented level of affordable housing to a heavily gentrified area of Brooklyn. A lot of people didn't like that. So I'm a veteran of these fights. They're never easy. That being said, we're going to spend a lot more time going out into communities and talking about why this has to happen, and I think people are receptive. Yes, I mean, I was struck immediately. I was at St. Rita's Church in East New York a few weeks back, and then I was with Councilmember Gibson at a church in the South Bronx just, I think, 2 weeks ago. And I think it's very important that I go out to the people and explain this vision, and I find when I talk to people about it, there's a lot of receptivity. When they understand how this is a departure from the past and a status quo they were not comfortable with, I think a lot of people feel that there's something there that could work. I have to do a lot more of that, there's no question. All right, we're going to conclude on this. I'm sorry, media questions only? Media? No? Okay, on this topic? Go ahead. No? Okay, we're going to off topic. Go. We added the money because we weren't satisfied. And we believed we could do better if we added additional ambulances. It will be something we work on literally every week, every month, trying to perfect if with the tools we have now, can we get that response time to a level we feel is consistently appropriate. And there's other changes, as you know, technology and other changes underway as well. So I would argue that is something we will look at literally every budget cycle to determine if we have the resources we need. If we ever believe we need more, it will be one of our highest priorities. So far, we're still waiting to see the full impact of what we have invested, but if we think more is necessary, we will not hesitate. I think the history of agencies working together, or in some cases being merged, as with fire and EMS, is always more complicated than any of us laymen would think. And it wasn't so long ago that there were very tangible tensions between FDNY and NYPD. Those have been greatly improved and addressed. It wasn't long ago there were tremendous tensions between the FBI and the NYPD. Those have been addressed very, very effectively, and I give Commissioner Bratton and the leadership of the FBI a lot of credit. Everyone knew when FDNY and EMS were merged that it would take a while to get those two cultures and approaches fully integrated. But Commissioner Nigro is the person who actually started the process with some other folks in the FDNY, absolutely believes it's something we have to keep improving. It is also what you're seeing happening in many places around the country. So I think that's why these things don't happen easily, but I do think it's moving well, and I think we'll continue to improve it. Yes?
Mr. Mayor, what do you think about Israel's restrictions on Palestinians and Palestinian Americans trapped in Gaza?
I'm not familiar with those restrictions, so I need to see that before I can give you a good response. Yes. The Port Authority is its own world. You know, I've made very clear from a city of New York perspective that we have a very, very high bar when it comes to economic development subsidies. The state, the Port Authority have a different approach. So I don't want to speak about their work. I think in our case, we are very, very choosy in those matters. Yeah.
In September, you had a meeting with John Paulson, the hedge fund manager, and some other people to talk about charter schools and parochial schools. We were worried about that this week. And then you've also been reaching out. Henry had a story this week with some other hedge funders or investment banks. I'm curious if there's an effort on your part to reach out to maybe a constituent base that doesn't know you as well or perhaps wasn't part of your natural following coming into office.
Well, I think, I'm not sure I would say there's a effort at a whole constituency here. I think on the specific question of the charter schools, you know, I think we were very clear in the first year that I needed to do a better job of explaining our vision of how all the pieces of the education agenda work together. And that was the speech I gave at Riverside Church last spring, the spring of 2014. And I think since then, we've done a lot of work with a lot of elements of the charter community. Now, charter school movement is very, very diverse. Some elements of it, some approaches, I've been very clear I don't agree with. The ones I think don't include as well as they should special ed kids or English language learners or very test prep and standardized test focused, et cetera. But a number of elements of the charter community have been great partners, have been very effective, have been very inclusive. In fact, we've deepened our collaboration and trying to learn best practices that charter schools can offer to traditional public schools and vice versa. Chancellor's been doing a lot of that. I've had meetings with a number of folks who are supporters of the charter movement and want to foster that collaboration, coordination. Deputy Mayor Bury, who actually helped to start a charter school, has been working with a lot of folks in the charter movement. So I would say that what's happening is there's a natural common ground that's emerging with a big swath of the charter movement, and we intend to keep working together to find ways that we can, you know, achieve together.
Two more questions.
Okay, you had one. Let's go here. I'm not an expert. Obviously, I'd want to discuss that with our Commissioner of Health, Dr. Bassett. I'd want to discuss that with two leaders who, as you could see the other day, feel very passionately, Borough President Otto and Senator Lanza, who have been key partners in this work. So I don't know enough about it, but we'll have those conversations and then have something to say. Well, I think I don't have a perfect analysis for you. I think that what's obvious is there's some areas where we had an approach that worked and was well received and well understood. I think everyone would agree pre-K is a good example of that. I would certainly say on the affordable housing effort, I don't know anyone who opposes the notion of an unprecedented affordable housing effort. So there's been a lot of support for that broad idea. I think the mechanics, and let's face it, mandatory inclusionary zoning is it takes a certain amount of technical focus, if you will, for people to fully hear all of that. But I think there have been some areas where we put forward a vision and we're able to show it was working and we're able to get a lot of support. I think other areas where clearly, if it's not getting the kind of response we expected, I start with the assumption we're not explaining it well enough. Now, you could say, well, what about the possibility that something needs to be done differently? That's something we will consider every day, of course. But when I look at some of these, and I think mandatory inclusionary is a great example, when I go out and explain it, when we listen to people's concerns and answer them, when we show them how their concerns are actually being met, a lot of people's minds change. And, you know, it's like everything else in the world. People desire information, they deserve to have their questions answered, and that's what we're going to do. Thanks, everyone.